Hello everyone. Before we begin, I'd love to know, where are you listening from tonight? And what time is it there? Now, close your eyes and listen closely to The Clockmaker of Bromley Street. It was during a particularly dry spell in the spring of 1895 that Sherlock Holmes, having found himself mired in boredom between cases, took to the unusual pastime of examining newspaper correction columns. His reasoning, as always, was curiously precise. "The margin of human error, Watson," he explained one morning as we sat beside the hearth, "is where the truth most often hides. Between misprints and retractions, one may uncover what someone wished to obscure." That morning's discovery was curious indeed. Correction: in our April 3rd edition, we mistakenly reported the passing of Mr. Thaddeus Burchill, retired clockmaker of Bromley Street. Mr. Burchill is alive and well. We regret the error. What of it? I asked. Holmes folded the page, eyes gleaming. Thaddeus Burchill did die, Watson, 3 days ago, of natural causes. The paper was correct the first time. Then why the retraction? That, my dear fellow, he said, reaching for his coat, is what we are going to discover. Bromley Street lay in the heart of Clerkenwell, a tight maze of crooked shops, iron grates, and perpetual damp. Number 14 was a shop front of antique timber, with gilded lettering still visible beneath decades of grime. Burchill and Son, Horologist's Estate, 1839. The door was ajar. Inside, the tick of clocks surrounded us, grandfathers, mantles, cuckoos, and regulators, each keeping its own rhythm. The air smelled of oil, dust, and something subtler, ozone, almost metallic. Holmes ran his finger along a workbench thick with filings and gears. "Fresh shavings," he murmured. "But the man is dead, is he not?" Holmes didn't reply. He pointed to a journal open on the bench. The last entry, dated 2 days after the supposed death, the 8th of April, he came again. Same question. Same offer. I refused. But I fear he will not ask a third time. Holmes lifted an envelope tucked beneath the page. Inside, a letter, unsigned, unaddressed. "Time is a circle, Mr. Burchill, and you sit at its center. We require only your hands to set it turning again." A threat, or an appeal? I asked. Holmes shrugged. Possibly both. We interviewed the local undertaker, Mr. Fallow, who confirmed he had collected a body from the address on the 3rd, male, elderly, no signs of foul play. "And you're sure it was Burchill?" Holmes asked. Fallow nodded. "Had the shop's records. Identified by the landlady. We buried him proper." "Where?" "Brookwood Cemetery." An hour later, we stood at the grave, modest, recent, clearly attended. Holmes knelt beside it, running his fingers along the soil. Then he did something that startled even me. He began to dig. "Holmes!" I protested. "This is absurd. but he continued, pulling away the upper layers with surprising strength. 10 minutes later, his spade struck pine. And then emptiness. The coffin was empty. The following morning, Holmes received a note by hand. No seal. No name. It is not yet time for you, Mr. Holmes. Leave the circle. Holmes read it twice, then burned it. We are not merely dealing with a vanishing, he said. We are dealing with an erasure. He ordered a visit to the Royal Society archives, where Burchell's father, Edwin Burchell, had once presented a paper titled On the Suspension of Oscillatory Harmonics in Personal Chronometry. The theory, as Holmes summarized it, was the possibility of regulating the human sense of time through mechanical exposure, clocks tuned to affect memory, rhythm, and even perception. Madness, I said. Holmes tapped the paper. Madness with method. Thaddeus took his father's theory and built it. That night, we returned to the shop under cover of darkness. Holmes picked the rear door with minimal effort. Inside, the clocks ticked as before, but with something new. A pulse. Every few seconds, a low chime reverberated, not from any visible source, but from within the walls. Holmes approached the grandfather clock by the stairs. Its pendulum was not swinging. He opened the casing and gasped. Inside was not a weight, but a small brass sphere. Floating in mid-air, slowly spinning, its core glowing faintly red. I reached toward it. Holmes caught my wrist. Don't. The field is active. Field. Holmes nodded grimly. He's built a temporal harmonic amplifier. Using magnetics, crystal oscillators, and something else. Something I can't identify. Are you saying this clock manipulates time? Not time. The sense of it. He wasn't trying to stop clocks, he was trying to pause people. Suddenly, the chime stopped. The ticking halted. And the room went utterly still. Holmes whispered, "He's here." From the stairwell, a man emerged, thin, upright, eyes sharp. Thaddeus Burchell. Alive! Thaddeus Burchell descended the staircase with eerie calm, the pale light from his shop casting a ghostly halo around his frame. Despite his age, his movements were fluid, unnaturally so. His gaze settled on Holmes, then me, with something more akin to amusement than alarm. "I warned you," he said softly, "that it was not yet your time." Holmes, to his credit, remained composed. "You died on the 3rd of April. The coroner, the burial, confirmed by multiple witnesses." Burchell gave a slow nod. "Yes. They saw what they needed to see. And yet here you are." "Because I stepped out," Burchell replied. "Just briefly. Long enough to test the perimeter." "The perimeter of what?" I asked, unable to conceal my growing unease. He pointed toward the brass sphere in the clock. "Of time as you know it." Holmes crossed the room, carefully observing the device. You've created a harmonic loop, a localized frequency that affects neurological perception. A sort of temporal anesthesia. I created nothing, Burchill said with a frown. I inherited it. Holmes raised an eyebrow. From your father? Burchill shook his head. From the circle. He led us into the basement workshop, a room filled with antique instruments and unfamiliar machines. Pendulums suspended in glass, metronomes that beat without sound, and strange rods that glowed faintly under gaslight. On the wall hung a symbol I didn't recognize, a closed eye, inside a ring of clock hands. Holmes narrowed his eyes. This is not just a theory. It's a doctrine. Burchill motioned to a chest at the center of the room. Open it. Inside lay documents, blueprints, and 7 identical gold pocket watches. Each one ticked perfectly in unison, except one, which was silent. Burchill picked it up. This belonged to Ellis Morrow. Who? A member of the circle. He broke the harmonic, tried to reset his own time signature. He dissolved. Holmes said nothing. Burchill continued, You see, Mr. Holmes, the circle preserves order. Each of us maintains a quadrant of perception. Together, we ensure time remains stable, interpretable. Through manipulation. I asked. Through stewardship, Burchill corrected. Holmes finally spoke. So why the false death? Why the theatrical vanishing? Burchill hesitated. Because I defected. Holmes tilted his head. From the circle. They intend to expand the field beyond individual perception. A city-wide resonance. What would that do? Collapse the linearity of time. Past, present, future, overlate. No sequence. No memory. No difference between cause and consequence. Holmes's face hardened. Who leads them? Burchill met his eyes. The one who signed the note you burned. His name is not spoken, but he is called the Orologist. Later that evening, we returned to Baker Street, the gold watch from Morrow tucked safely in Holmes's coat. Holmes paced for hours, muttering to himself. They're not manipulating time itself, that's impossible, but they're manipulating our sense of it. That's how they vanish. That's how they erase. He paused suddenly, snapping his fingers. Watson, the newspaper. I handed him the folded April edition. Holmes flipped to the obituaries. There, he said, pointing to an entry. Horace Bellamy, 49, died of a sudden seizure. Known to suffer from intense hallucinations. Bellamy was an archivist at the British Museum, Holmes said. Worked with rare timepieces. He handled the chronophage manuscript, an ancient text rumored to contain time formulas written in harmonic codes. You believe the circle is targeting anyone who gets close? Yes. And Bellamy's death was not a seizure, it was desynchronization. His brain lost its ability to distinguish sequence. I shuddered. Like a record skipping forever. Exactly. The next morning, a letter arrived. This time, it was signed. "You are warned again, Mr. Holmes. The clockmaker is out of time. If you follow him, you will lose your own." Oh, Holmes crushed the letter. It's an invitation. To what? To enter the circle. We met Burchell again that evening in a warehouse near the wharf. He had prepared a device. A modified regulator clock with 3 dials. "This will shield you for an hour," he explained, strapping it to Holmes's wrist. "Beyond that, you may slip." Slip? Chronological dissociation. You'll feel like you're skipping between memories, but in reality, your body will be moving. I adjusted my revolver. And what do I get? "A prayer," Burchell muttered. The location of the circle's meeting was given only in coordinates, which Holmes decoded from the time signatures hidden in Bellamy's obituary. It led us to a subterranean platform of the old Metropolitan Railway, abandoned, half-flooded, lit only by faint blue lamps. We found them in the tunnel's belly. 7 figures, each in black coats and silver-rimmed spectacles. In the center, the orologist. He turned as we approached. His voice was smooth, precise. "You are not here to understand, Mr. Holmes. You are here to observe your own irrelevance." Holmes stepped forward. "You cannot alter perception without consequence. We do not alter. We liberate. Time enslaves all, dictates every sorrow, every loss. We unbind it. You erase it," Holmes countered. The orologist smiled. "You see erasure. We see peace." He raised his hand. The watches began to chime. Reality bent. I saw Holmes multiply, versions of him flickering in and out of form. Then I saw myself, older, younger, injured, dead. I screamed. And then Holmes struck the regulator on his wrist. It sparked. The chamber collapsed. We awoke hours later, alone, soaked, the tunnel empty. Holmes sat up first. We disrupted the field. Temporarily. And Burchell? No sign. Holmes stared at the pocket watch in his hand, Morrow's. It had started ticking again. For several days following the collapse of the Circle's chamber, Holmes retreated into an intense and uncharacteristic silence. He spoke little, ate less, and kept to his chemistry table with a singular purpose, disassembling the recovered regulator from his wrist and rebuilding it with unknown modifications. I grew concerned, not only by the wear on Holmes's frame, but by what he refused to say. "What did you see in that moment?" I asked one morning. He looked up, not from a place of distraction but from deep recollection. "Myself," he said. "In the future." "No. In many futures. Some dead. Some mad. 1. Watching me from the other side of the chamber. He returned to his soldering iron. Time, it seems, does not run, it surrounds. We received news from Brookwood Cemetery the following evening. A gravedigger reported that the empty coffin Holmes had unearthed weeks earlier had mysteriously reburied itself, sealed, undisturbed, and now occupied. Inside, a corpse. Brittle, lifeless, and unmistakably Thaddeus Burchill. We were there within the hour. Holmes performed a full inspection. This is no waxwork, he confirmed. This is the same man we saw in the flesh, now desynchronized. I leaned closer. Desynchronized? He slipped his time signature too many times. Eventually, his mind and matter lost alignment. His body died long before this burial, but only recently returned to the correct when. And now he's reinserted into his proper slot. Exactly. The circle is cleaning its trail. Later that night, I found Holmes mapping dates and obituaries across a blackboard, marking London as a web of silent deaths, vanishing names, and altered registries. They're testing something, he muttered. A larger harmonic field, something beyond our understanding. He circled a name, Dr. Linnea Shaw. Who's that? I asked. A neuroharmonics researcher at King's College. She wrote a paper 5 years ago on temporal dissonance and lucid memory reversion. It was banned by the Royal Society. Her work aligned too closely with the Circle's theories. Is she alive? She was. Holmes pointed to an article dated 3 days prior. Academic dead in library fire. No witnesses found. We went to the scene the next morning. Though the library was closed and scorched, Holmes found a detail no one else had noticed. Inside the debris of the professor's private room was an unburned journal. Its pages were filled with harmonic charts and notes about something called the Bell equation. One phrase appeared over and over: he who listens across intervals leaves no footprints behind. Holmes closed the journal with a snap. The orologist is building a bridge. A bridge to what? To before. Holmes requested we travel to Edinburgh, a sudden detour I didn't understand until he explained. Before the Circle was London-based, it met under another name, the Society of Repeating Forms. Founded in 1844 by 3 men. One was Burchill's father. Another was Ellis Morrow. The third, Henry Flax. Still alive? No. But his home remains. And according to legend, its clocks never stopped ticking. We arrived at the Flax estate just as dusk cloaked the hills in mist. The house was derelict, but the air inside thrummed with low vibrations. Everywhere, pendulums swung. Clocks without weights kept time with unnatural accuracy. And then we found the hidden room. It was shielded behind a mirror, activated by striking a particular note on a glass harmonica set into the wall. Inside, a shrine of sorts. A chair bolted to the floor, surrounded by coils and dials. Holmes examined the setup. It's a listening chamber. For sound. For time. He showed me a set of copper wires leading to a headset, its cups padded with some mineral I didn't recognize. Holmes sat down. Placed them on. His body went still. For 5 long minutes, he did not move. Then, he gasped, tore the headset off, and spoke in a voice I barely recognized. "They are not trying to change time," he said slowly. "They are trying to hear someone through it." "Who?" Holmes shook his head. "A signal. A pattern. They think time is not a river, but a looped broadcast. And the orologist intends to decode it." We returned to London immediately. Holmes contacted Mycroft through a secure channel and arranged for surveillance of abandoned clock towers, observatories, and any location exhibiting harmonic anomalies. Within 24 hours, the name Barnaby Reeds appeared across 3 of them. He was an acoustician, a sound engineer with a criminal past, now associated with a front company called Aurosmiths Limited. Holmes and I tracked Reeds to a bell foundry on the Thames. Inside, we found him dead. Self-inflicted. But etched into the bell he had been tuning were exact harmonic frequencies, identical to those from Flax's chamber. And a phrase, "The bell is ready. London is the chamber." Holmes stared at it. "They're going to ring the city." We returned to Baker Street to prepare. Holmes gathered a series of devices, small harmonic disruptors, a modified version of the wrist regulator, and a final instrument I hadn't seen before, a tuning fork crafted from a reddish alloy that vibrated before even being struck. "This," Holmes said gravely, "is a counter-chime. If they initiate the harmonic field, this must be struck at its resonance peak. And if it isn't, then all of London may forget itself." At midnight on the final day of April, Holmes and I stood atop the bell tower of St. Agatha's, the point of central resonance as predicted by his calculations. All across the city, bell towers and underground stations began to hum. A vibration deeper than hearing, felt in the bones. And then, silence. Holmes counted. "Now." He struck the fork. The sound that erupted was not sound at all, but space. Folding. Warping. Realigning. The bells below cracked. Light bent around us. And then it stopped. Time resumed. In the aftermath, no one in London remembered the event. No bells had rung. No clocks had broken. But Holmes and I knew better. Because that night, on the wall of our sitting room, a single clock ticked backward in the quiet days that followed the failed harmonic event, Holmes became increasingly withdrawn. It was not the first time I had seen him brood, but this was different. He was not angry, nor melancholy. He was listening. "The fork worked," I said one morning. The resonance was neutralized. "London is safe. For now," he muttered. "What remains?" Holmes turned slowly. "The circle isn't gone. It has simply moved forward. He tapped a note that had arrived hours earlier. No seal. Only a scrap of parchment with precise, mechanical script. Your presence disrupted an echo. But echoes do not die. They recur. We will wait for the next alignment. Oh, later that day, Inspector Lestrade arrived unexpectedly. I need your help, Holmes. We found a man. Alive, walking, speaking, who appears to be two people at once. Holmes's brow lifted. Explain. Lestrade removed his hat, clearly unsettled. Two identities. Two memories. Both overlapping in one body. We're calling him the doubled man. Holmes stood. Where is he? Bethlehem Hospital. Secured. We followed Lestrade immediately. The man sat chained to a cot in a stone cell beneath the asylum. His hair was wild, his face thin, but his eyes were calm, too calm. He introduced himself with two names. I am John Elric. No, wait. I am Peter Ebbing. He alternated back and forth, reciting details of both lives, birthplaces, childhoods, families. In one life, he was a banker. In the other, a musician. Both records matched official documents. What do you remember of the last week? Holmes asked. Elric Ebbing answered, I remember walking out of a train station and being watched by someone who looked exactly like me. He stepped toward me. Then there was a noise. A tuning fork. Then I awoke in the street. But I was in both heads. Holmes nodded. You were resonated. Lestrade blinked. What? A harmonic overlap of perception, Holmes said. The circle must have been running field tests in small areas, testing identity cohesion under layered timelines. They're blending people. I asked. No. They're blending choices. Overlaying different decisions made in different timelines into one consciousness. Holmes turned to Lestrade. Do not let this man out of your sight. If the field reconnects to him, he may fracture entirely. That night, Holmes and I returned to Baker Street and discovered that someone had entered our flat. Nothing was taken. Nothing disturbed. Except the wall clock. Its hands were gone. And in their place, a folded piece of parchment tucked into the empty face. Holmes unfolded it slowly. Time is no longer measured. It is chosen. And you chose wrong. Oh, this is not just a message, Holmes muttered. It's an equation. He examined the folds of the parchment, noting the creases, the angles, even the ink thickness. After nearly 2 hours, he declared, they've embedded harmonic ratios into the folds themselves, paper creased at precise Fibonacci intervals. It's a temporal cipher. Meaning. Coordinates. And a date. When? 3 days from now. Location, Venice. We traveled immediately. By the time we arrived, Venice was already shrouded in a spring fog, its canals hushed, its clocks all slightly off. We were met at the train station not by a stranger, but by a letter. The Campanile is a gate. Midnight toll shall answer the fork. You are invited. Oh, the Campanile, St. Mark's bell tower, was under repair at the time, the belfry wrapped in scaffolding and tarps. But Holmes gained us entry through a bribe and a borrowed maintenance schedule. We climbed in silence. Near the summit, Holmes found it, an exposed panel behind the bell, filled with harmonic rods, coils, and a fork larger than any I had seen, for feet long, carved from stone. It's a resonance generator, Holmes said. If struck at the correct moment, it can create a full harmonic field, not just for a chamber, but for a city. Are they targeting Venice? Perhaps. Or perhaps this is only the gateway. He held up the tuning fork he had built weeks earlier, the one that had saved London. It's calibrated to the previous resonance. This is its sibling. At midnight, the bell began to toll. Holmes struck the fork. The entire tower vibrated. And then we saw it, a shimmer in the air, like heat haze, forming a doorway beneath the belfry. A figure stepped through. It was Holmes. But not the man beside me. Older. Hardened. Scarred. His voice was deep, low. You must not let them finish it. Finish what? The Holmes beside me asked. The loop, said the older Holmes. They think it will unify perception. But it will remove choice. All things, past and future, happening at once. There will be no difference between regret and reality. Then the shimmer snapped shut, and he was gone. Back in London, Holmes was quiet. He no longer listened for clocks. He listened for possibility. We returned to Bethlehem to check on the doubled man, but found his cell empty. According to records, he had been released by Holmes. Only, Holmes had not authorized it. There was no footage, no signature, only a note left in the cell, in my own handwriting. You will understand when it happens to you. JW. For weeks, Holmes operated as if living between seconds. He would sit still for hours, eyes closed, ears attuned to the smallest clicks of mechanisms no one else heard. His violin sat untouched. The opium pipe remained sealed. He was haunted not by defeat, but by the possibility of a future he had met, and failed to prevent. We never spoke of the other Holmes again. Instead, we focused on the note, my handwriting, left in the cell of the doubled man. Holmes confirmed its ink matched my personal journal. Its fold matched my own letter habits. But I had never written it. Not in this life. This is residue from a collapsed field, Holmes said one morning. Your future self left a fragment behind, outside of sequence. Then the orologist was right, I said. Time is no longer linear. Holmes only nodded. Then came the incident at Westminster. The Speaker of the House collapsed mid-session, eyes vacant, claiming he had just returned from his own funeral. 6 witnesses confirmed he had been in the chamber all day. Holmes and I arrived within the hour. The Speaker was lucid but terrified. "I was at a chapel," he said. "My name engraved in the stone. Everyone was dressed in blue. They spoke of me as though I'd died 5 years prior. Then I blinked, and I was back." Holmes tested his pulse. Slow. Off rhythm. Another echo, he muttered. "Something is triggering these slips. A new kind of resonance." He placed a tuning disc on the man's chest. It vibrated faintly. He's still carrying the frequency. Holmes stared at me. "We need to return to the origin. To where the first echo occurred." "Bromley Street," I said. We returned at dusk. The shop was unchanged, but the clocks inside now ticked backward. Each second undone, rewound. Holmes moved with precision. He removed the brass sphere from the hidden compartment and placed it on the workbench. The source. The original harmonic. He tapped the sphere. It's broadcasting again. He connected it to a series of copper prongs and activated the regulator coil. The device emitted a single, clear tone, one I could feel in my teeth. And then I saw him. Myself. Standing on the far side of the shop. He stared at me, not with malice, but understanding. Holmes didn't flinch. "Don't move. Either of you." He slowly reduced the resonance. The double shimmered and vanished. "A full temporal convergence," Holmes whispered. "Your timelines intersected." "But why me?" "Because you were closest to the epicenter the night it all began. You touched the field. It imprinted on you." That night, Holmes began the most dangerous work of his life. Building the counterclock. Its purpose was simple, not to measure time, but to reject it. To anchor reality by denying the harmonic resonance itself. A device meant to say no to time's manipulation. But building it came at a price. His own perception began to slip. He would call me by names of men long dead. He once wrote an entire monologue in Greek, claiming it was dictated to him by the version of Watson who never joined the war. I feared losing him. But then came the event that solidified our course. The clocks of London stopped. All of them. At once. It was 2:17 a.m. Every bell, wristwatch, grandfather clock, and train station ticker halted mid-motion. For 17 seconds, London existed in silence. Then they resumed. But wrong. All clocks now ticked 1 second ahead of true time. Holmes stood at the window, pale. The loop has begun. Loop. He held up the new tuning fork, longer, darker, humming on its own. They've initiated the harmonic cascade. So what do we do? He looked at me, and for the first time in our long friendship, I saw fear. We go to where time began. Where did time begin? According to Holmes, at a fixed point in the Greenwich meridian, a location precisely calculated through centuries of celestial measurement, now buried beneath the Royal Observatory. Holmes acquired clearance through his brother Mycroft. We descended into the catacombs beneath the observatory, where older, forgotten instruments still lay beneath sheets and dust. Here, Holmes said, pointing to a plaque bolted to the floor. This was the original meridian stone. It is no longer used. Too primitive, they said. He knelt and began placing harmonic sensors around it, configuring a resonance cage. Why here? I asked. Because every loop needs an anchor. This is the axis on which human time was defined. If the orologist wants to rewrite perception, he must do it from here. We waited in silence. And then, at precisely 3:33 a.m., the temperature dropped. The shadows changed. And from the dark corridor behind us came footsteps. Holmes stood. A man stepped forward. Not Burchill. Not the orologist. But someone worse. Holmes. Another one. This Holmes was different, worn, gaunt, dressed not in our century's fashion but in something older, layered. His eyes were distant. Not mad, but emptied. This is what remains, he said softly. When you fail to bind the loop. He reached into his coat and withdrew a pocket watch with no face, only spinning hands. They call it the watch at zero. It does not tick. It waits. He placed it on the meridian stone and vanished. Holmes knelt beside it. This is the terminus. The place where all failed timelines gather. He picked it up. It was warm. Then the stone beneath us began to vibrate. He's coming, Holmes whispered. The orologist arrived not with spectacle, but with silence. He stepped from the shadows, slim, shrouded, wearing a coat lined with the ticking of hundreds of watches. His face was masked by a featureless visor, polished like obsidian. Holmes faced him. "You have no name," he said. The orologist replied in a voice both near and far, "Names bind. Time unbinds." Holmes held up the counterclock. It pulsed blue. "If you ring the field, you will break every mind in this city." "No. They will wake. They will fragment." The orologist raised a hand, and the watch at zero leapt from Holmes's pocket and floated above the meridian stone. "Choice is the illusion," he said. "Sequence is the lie." The watch split into 7 shards, each spinning, glowing. Holmes screamed, striking the counterclock against the stone. A wave of light exploded outward. And all time stopped. There are moments in life where time becomes still, not metaphorically, but utterly. Where no breath stirs, no thoughts form, and no forward motion seems possible. We were frozen in such a moment. Holmes, eyes wide, was locked mid-swing. The counterclock's glow held in a dome around us, freezing even the ambient dust. I could not move, could not blink. But I was aware, and I was not alone. Something moved through that stillness. Not the orologist, not Holmes, not even me. It was presence without form, idea without voice. And from it came a question, not spoken, but understood. Do you wish to continue? My soul answered without words. Yes. With a crack like thunder heard from underwater, time resumed. Holmes collapsed to one knee, smoke rising from the counterclock. The shards of the watch at 0 had fused again, now ticking. Softly. Normally. The orologist stood still. Frozen. Not in time, but in thought. Do you hear it? Holmes asked me, barely above a whisper. I listened. The ticking of the watch. 7 ticks. Then silence. And I understood. It's not a watch, I said. It's a question. Holmes nodded. 7 ticks. 7 timelines. Only one survives. The orologist staggered, reaching out. His coat shimmered, dozens of ticking sounds stopped all at once. Then, his mask cracked. Beneath it, no face. Only an infinite mirror. I looked into it. I saw myself, alive, dead, different. I saw Holmes, old, young, broken, victorious. I saw a world unmade by the absence of sequence. A blur of cause and consequence, where nothing meant anything because all was always. Then the mirror shattered, and the orologist collapsed. We buried the watch at 0 beneath the old meridian stone. Holmes sealed it with copper and silence. If time returns, he said, it must return by choice. The weeks that followed were strangely calm. London's clocks behaved. No one remembered the stoppage at 2:17 a.m. No headlines reported the deaths of echoing men or the collapse beneath Greenwich. The circle, if it still existed, had fallen quiet. But I knew Holmes had not forgotten. He would sometimes take out the counterclock, though it no longer ticked. Only pulsed faintly, as if remembering sound. Once, I asked him, "Do you still hear it?" Holmes replied, "No." But I remember why I did. On the final evening of that spring, we stood on Bromley Street once more. The clock shop had been sold to a candlemaker. No traces of Burchill remained. "Do you believe it's over?" I asked. Holmes looked skyward. "I believe time is never over. Only delayed. But for now, a yes." He turned to me with a rare warmth. "And if it returns, we shall be ready. Time, after all, is only an illusion." He paused. "One we know how to break." We buried the watch at 0 beneath the meridian stone as the city slept in deceptive peace. Holmes's reassurance was steady, time was anchored, the loop shattered. But I noticed a subtle change in him. His eyes, once sharp and unyielding, flickered with uncertainty. At night, he would rise from his chair and stare at the counterclock's faint pulse, as if waiting for a whisper that never came. Then, on a rainy London evening nearly 2 months later, a knock at Baker Street shattered the fragile calm. Holmes opened the door himself. Standing there was a figure I did not recognize, tall, cloaked in shadows, his face hidden beneath a hood. "I bring a message," the stranger said, voice cold and precise. "The loop has not ended. It cycles. 7 ticks are not the end, but the beginning." Holmes's expression hardened. "Who are you?" "The watchman," the man replied, "a guardian of temporal balance. You stopped one cycle, but the next is inevitable. Time always ticks again." Holmes gestured us inside, the air thick with tension. "I knew there would be a recurrence," he whispered. The harmonic cascade was a symptom, not a cure. The watchman pulled from his cloak a small device, a watch without hands, but with 7 lights circling its face. "When all lights have blinked, the cycle begins anew," he said. He placed the device on the mantelpiece. The lights flickered. 1, 2, 3. Holmes's jaw clenched. "I fear we are not finished yet," he said quietly. "The 7th tick repeats, and with it, our fate." The days that followed were a careful dance of vigilance and investigation. Holmes and I pored over every detail the watchman had brought, trying to decipher the cryptic warnings and the meaning behind the 7 blinking lights. We learned that the watchman was part of a secret order, keepers of temporal equilibrium who sought to prevent catastrophic fractures in time's fabric. Their methods were arcane, relying on harmonic resonance and quantum theories beyond the comprehension of even Holmes. The cycles, Holmes explained one evening as he sketched complex equations by lamplight, are attempts by the universe to reset itself when too many divergent paths threaten to unravel reality. "But how do we stop them?" I asked. Holmes sighed. "That is the question. The watchman's device measures the progression, but offers no remedy. We are on borrowed time." One night, as the 7th light began its slow blink, the city around us seemed to pulse with an eerie stillness. People moved sluggishly, their shadows lengthening unnaturally. Holmes and I ascended once more to the Meridian Stone, where the counterclock hummed faintly. The watchman appeared suddenly, his face still shrouded. "The window is opening," he said. "Soon, the cycle will complete, and all choices will collapse into a single path." Holmes activated the counterclock, its pulse rising in frequency. The 7 lights on the watchman's device blinked in rapid succession. 6, 7. A terrible silence fell. Then time surged back in a violent flood. Time crashed back with a force that staggered even Holmes. The air around the Meridian Stone rippled, warping light and sound. "We're at the precipice," Holmes said, gripping the counterclock. "The cycle completes, but the outcome is still unknown." Suddenly, the ground beneath us shook, and a shattering sound split the air. The watchman's device exploded into a shower of blinking lights that scattered like fireflies in the dark. From the fractured timepiece, a figure emerged, neither fully here nor there. It was me. Or rather, a version of me caught between moments. "You don't understand," the echo whispered. "Each cycle tries to find a stable pattern. But the universe demands choice, it demands change. If we force order, we lose the chaos that creates possibility." Holmes stepped forward. "Then what do we do?" "Let time tear itself apart." "No," the echo replied. "We learn to listen to its rhythm, not control it. We become part of the harmony." The counterclock pulsed wildly. In that instant, Holmes made his decision. He struck the device one last time. A brilliant wave of light enveloped us. When it faded, the watchman was gone. The 7 lights had disappeared. Only the steady tick of the counterclock remained. Holmes looked at me and smiled. "The loop is broken, not by force, but by understanding. Time flows again, because we allowed it to." Outside, the city breathed in its normal rhythm. Yet, somewhere deep beneath the meridian stone, a faint pulse echoed, the heartbeat of countless possibilities, waiting to unfold.